everyone, I wanted to share with you how to make one of my favorite desserts, the croquembouche, which is a French term for crack in the mouth. It's filled with creamy and dreamy coffee and chocolate custard. We then finish it with a toffee and assemble it. Now I create this without a cone and I'm going to show you how to do it with lots of tips and tricks along the way. Hope you join me on this journey on how to make your own croquembouche. Now with a good choux pastry recipe, and once you know all the tips and tricks, you can make any of the choux pastry types. So we've got eclair, we've got Paris bresse, we've got choux buns, profiteroles. So many different options with this one recipe. Now to start, we're going to add water into a saucepan. If you like a golden color, mix half milk and water for the total weight of water. The good thing about choux pastry is it's neither sweet or savory, so we do add some salt, but we add the same quantity of sugar, so it's not sweet at all. So if you want to make a savory option, it's quite easy to do. We add in unsalted butter. Now I'm using a cultured butter, which means the cream was fermented before it was churned, which I really like the flavor of a cultured butter. So add that in. I always use unsalted so I can control how much salt that I do add. If you're looking for the recipe for this croquembouche and want to recreate it yourself, you'll find that below in the comments, and also a link there to the Savour School blog, so you'll find the recipe in both places. Now I'm going to turn this on to heat. The important thing here is not to boil it for too long. If you boil it for an extended period of time, you're going to evaporate a lot of water, which can change the consistency of your choux pastry. So you just want to bring it up to a simmer and ensure that all the butter is melted before we turn off the heat and add in the flour. I've sieved the flour before I've started to ensure that I don't get any lumps. Now that's come up to a boil and all the butter has melted. I'm now going to add in some sieved plain flour, or it can be referred to as all-purpose flour. Add that all in. Then without the heat on, give it a really good stir. Especially if you're short like me, this can be quite the workout. Once you've got all the flour incorporated, you then turn the heat back on. Now this is where the workout comes in, as well as a bit of a choux pastry facial at the same time. You need to really vigorously stir the mixture with the heat on, and this develops a gluten. So without this step, your little profiteroles will actually collapse. So this develops a structure in the choux pastry, so as it bakes, it stretches up, and by developing the gluten, it allows it to actually hold that shape and not collapse. So if you don't mix it enough, it will actually give you pancakes rather than little profiteroles. How you know when it's ready or not? Your arm will be really tired. That's the first tip. The other thing is it will come together as a ball. As the mixture tightens, you'll get a slightly oily sheen on the surface. So I'm going to turn the heat back on now and give that a workout. I am a little bit short, so I'm up on my tippy toes because this is quite high. So turn the heat back on, and I'm going to give that a really good stir. So this has come together beautifully, and as that has tightened, it's got a slight oily sheen. I should mention as well, you need a really firm spoon. So a wooden spoon or something hard like that is great for stirring. You don't want anything that's flexible. Transfer this immediately into the bowl of a stand mixer. You can do this by hand, but after that workout, you may need a mixer. You can use a hand blender as well. Now we add the eggs while it's hot, but we only add a small amount at a time. Break up the eggs. With choux pastry, we never know how many eggs we're going to add because it depends how long you cooked it for, how long you boiled the water for, the strength of your flour as to how much eggs it requires. So I'll show you what consistency you're looking for when the choux pastry is ready. I'm using a paddle attachment. You can also use a whisk, but you don't want to mix it on high speed. And to start, I'm going to add just a minuscule amount of egg. So about a teaspoon at a time at the start. You must fully incorporate each application of egg before you add any more, or else you're going to get lumps in the mixture, which you can't eliminate. As soon as each application of egg is mixed in, you can add a little bit more. As you start adding the egg mixture, you can slowly increase the quantity that you add as you're going, but you must ensure after each application of egg that it fully incorporates before you add any more. You'll see the mixture now is separated. Once it comes together, that's when we start testing the consistency to see if we've added enough egg. The mixture has come together now, so we'll do our first test. So take a spoon, grab a scoop of the mixture. Remember, regardless what type of choux pastry you're making, you'll always do the same process until the piping. What we do is we hold the spoon on an angle and we look to see if it's moving. If it's not moving, it's not ready. We want it to really slowly glide off the spoon. You don't want it to be too quick either. So we continue to add eggs and we keep checking now after each application of egg. Ooh, we have a little bit of movement. So this is what we're looking for, a really slow glide. So it's just moving off the spoon, but it is moving. If it moves much faster than that, you'll also get flat choux pastry, which we don't want. You always have plus or minus of the eggs. Sometimes we even need to add more. Each time you make choux pastry, do this test to determine how many eggs you actually add. I'm going to give you some tips for piping the choux buns so you get a consistent size. Now I'm using a 3 centimeter ring. We place that onto a flat tray and we trace around it. This enables us to get really consistent size profiteroles. Leave a little bit of space. They're going to approximately double in size. Then we go in between on the next line. It's a great job for the kids. If you've got any children, you can get them to help. Ta-da! We're done. Looks like a piece of artwork. We then put a baking mat on top. You can also use baking paper. If you use baking paper, oil the tray and secure the paper down, because if you've got a fan forced oven, it'll blow up on the corners. I'm using what we call a French star piping nozzle. So it has teeth that only have a tiny V in between. What this does is it allows just enough expansion so we get a beautiful finish on our profiteroles. Roll the top of the bag down and we scoop it in. This makes 150 to 160 profiteroles. We're not messing about when we're making a croquembouche. You can leave the mixture out at room temperature or even in the fridge in between piping. I always start in the middle. Once again, I'm a little bit short, and then I rotate the tray around. So you've got a couple of ways of doing it. You can do a rosette like this, or you can pipe a star. I personally prefer the rosette. So we start here, we go around, stop the pressure, and then pull it around. Now, a little tip is if you have some peaks from your piping, is get a bowl of water and just tap the peaks down with your finger. By dipping your finger in the water, it means the choux pastry won't stick to your finger. Now, what you can also do is give the choux pastry a little sprinkle of water, which creates steam, which will help them rise. So just a little fleck of water on the tray. These are ready now to go into the oven. Preheat your oven to 170 degrees Celsius. They bake at 170 degrees, that's for a fan forced oven, for 15 minutes. Then we drop the temperature to 150 and we bake them for a further 15 minutes at 150 or until golden brown. If you do take them out too early, they can collapse. But if you take them out and they still feel a little bit soft, but they haven't collapsed, simply place them back into the oven to dry out a little bit. Now for the filling of the profiteroles, and I thought I would split it in half. We're going to do a chocolate crème pâtissière, which is a fancy name for custard, and we're going to do a coffee crème pâtissière. Now I've partnered up with Jura coffee machines that are the best in the business for automated coffee machines. They have a ceramic grinder. This is the Giga 10 that I'm using. We did have the Z10, but the volume of coffee we now drink at work means we needed to upgrade. So many different options on what coffees you can make, and it extracts the most beautiful flavors, which is why I'm using it in this recipe. So we're going to start with the crème pâtissière first. So we place some milk into the saucepan. Now in a bowl, we're going to combine sugar and cornstarch to ensure you don't get lumps in your custard. One of them is mixing the sugar with the cornstarch and combining the two, even though they're both dry ingredients, and that will help to avoid getting lumps. As soon as they are fully combined, we can then add in the egg yolks. Now, once this is mixed, this is referred to as a slurry, which is also used on building sites when you're bricklaying. Maybe similar consistency to cement, but obviously tastes a lot better. Now this is quite tight and quite dry. Just mix it until all the sugar and cornstarch are combined with that egg yolk. Now I'm using free-range eggs, which is why they're such a bright color. So don't panic if your crème pâtissière is a little bit paler in color. Adding some vanilla in with the milk. I'm using vanilla bean paste. I just find it more economical than vanilla beans themselves, but this is created and made from the vanilla bean, unlike vanilla essence, which is all synthetic. We bring this up to a boil. Got the milk. And then the trick is some people will add their slurry mixture into the boiled milk, but you always have to slowly add your milk to your slurry. That's another tip to help to avoid lumps. So a little bit in at a time, whisk that in and continue adding it. That is looking very good. Now it goes back into the saucepan and we keep the whisk. Pouring it in. Now I'm going to turn the heat back on, whisking continuously until it comes to a boil. Then you have to simmer it for 30 to 60 seconds to ensure that we actually gelatinize it and cook that starch. If you don't, you can have some moisture separate out of the crème pâtissière. Just a medium heat. That looks amazing. We're going to transfer that into a bowl. I should mention I've already got the crème pâtissière made, so I've only made a half batch. When you make it, you'll have double the volume. Transfer it immediately to a bowl. Now while whisking this continuously, we're going to add the butter a cube at a time. Make sure each application of butter is fully incorporated before you add the next. Look at that, all the butter is added and we've got silky smooth crème pâtissière. If you need to, you can mix it with a stick blender when you're adding the butter, and also if you've got a couple of little lumps, that'll help to smooth it out. I'm now going to split this into two. Okay, about half, and our second half. Add in some dark chocolate into one. Whisk that in, it should still have enough heat in it to melt the chocolate. How luscious does that look? Chocolate crème pâtissière, that is one of our two flavors. Now for the coffee flavor. One of the beautiful things about the Jura coffee machines is you have the option of cold brew. With the cold brew extraction, you don't release any of the tannins in the coffee, so you have the beautiful, delicate flavor and nuances of the coffee you choose to use, with no additional heat through the extraction of flavor from the beans. Once you add cold brew and start cooking with it and drinking it, you will never go back. Now I'm going to come around to your side of the bench because I can't really reach or see what I'm doing here, so bear with me. I'm going for the cold brew espresso. So I simply press this and then we sit back and wait. As simple as that, the cold brew is done. The crème pâtissière has cooled down slightly, so we can add that in. This will give a beautiful full-bodied coffee flavor. Whisk it in. It'll be slightly softer than the chocolate, a little bit creamier. We have both the coffee and the chocolate flavors. I recommend that you place these in the fridge for approximately 3 hours with plastic wrap touching the surface of the crème pâtissière before you pipe them into your profiteroles. Okay, we've got a whole lot going on here in preparation to dipping the profiteroles in toffee. So you always dip them in toffee before you fill them with the crème pâtissière because the toffee makes the profiteroles really hot and you don't want your crème pâtissière to become hot because it will really shorten the shelf life. You need a bowl of ice to cool the toffee down so it doesn't overheat. What we also need is the profiteroles completely cooled, and we need to put a hole in the base of each profiterole first. You need a sheet of baking paper. We're going to dip the profiteroles in the toffee and put them on the baking paper. And of course, we've got the ingredients for the toffee. So first things first, we place a hole in the bottom of the profiterole. I've got a really great knife that comes to a point, and I can just spin that around to create a little cavity in the base. And what I will mention as well is I do this with my pinky finger. Make sure that your finger can fit into the profiterole because that's how we dip it. Once you place a hole in the base, turn them up so you can see which ones you've done. Now I will tell you, with smaller profiteroles, you'll have a smaller croquembouche. With larger profiteroles, you'll have more gaps in between, but it will actually be taller. Profiteroles are prepared. Obviously I have more than this because our croquembouche is going to be beautiful and tall. Now we place the water into the saucepan first, always. Place the sugar in. Now you want this to be quite high up in the saucepan so you've got plenty of space to dip. So don't use a really wide base frying pan or saucepan because you'll only have a really shallow level, which makes it difficult to dip. We're going to bring this to a boil. Now with sugar and water you can stir it until it starts to boil, then you can't stir it anymore because that agitation will cause the sugar you've dissolved to recrystallize. Once it comes to a boil, we then add in liquid glucose. You can replace this with light corn syrup if you can't get liquid glucose. We're going to cook this to 170 degrees Celsius, and then the ice comes into play. We put it directly onto the ice to stop it cooking. Put it straight onto ice. Keep it on the ice until the bubbles dissipate on the surface, and you should have a light golden color. You want the color for the croquembouche to be consistent, and you're going to use multiple pots of sugar. I find it easier to use smaller pots and do multiple pots rather than use one big pot, because then you have to keep reheating it. Every time you reheat it, it goes darker. Then you're going to get different shades of colored toffee on your croquembouche. Place it down onto a cloth so it doesn't cool too quickly. Dip your finger into the profiterole, and you want to dip it so you're dipping the sides as well as the base. You have to be very careful that you don't burn yourself. If you do burn yourself, don't try to peel the toffee off. Put your hand in cold water for about 20 to 30 minutes, and only once the toffee's set, then you can actually peel it off. If you don't coat the sides of the profiterole enough, when you go to join the croquembouche together, the sides will be too soft and it can drop and collapse. Don't let the toffee get too cold because the coating of toffee will be too thick and hard to bite through. As it cools down, you can reheat it just on a low heat and stir it just gently. Don't vigorously stir it because it can crystallize the toffee. So my toffee now is a little bit thicker. It's time to reheat, but before I reheat it, I just want to show you the beauty of dipping the profiterole this way is that I get that beautiful flat surface, which makes it really easy to align the profiteroles and make sure I have a straight croquembouche. We must ensure that we cool the profiteroles completely because they do warm up quite a bit with the toffee before we fill them with the crème pâtissière. So I'll keep dipping. The profiteroles are all dipped and they're cooled down. I've got the chocolate crème pâtissière and the coffee crème pâtissière in bags. What's important to know, once you put the toffee on these profiteroles, it starts absorbing humidity from the atmosphere immediately. So we fill these and then assemble it as quickly as we can. Once you fill them, you can't put it in the fridge because the toffee will dissolve. In a really humid atmosphere, once your croquembouche is assembled, I'd say you get about 4 hours. In a drier atmosphere, you'll get approximately 6 hours once a croquembouche is assembled. That's a combination of the humidity dissolving the toffee and the structure becomes compromised, but also the fact that that crème pâtissière is sitting outside. Now I'm going to alternate the fillings and skip every second one with chocolate and then go back through and fill the remainder with coffee. So when I assemble the croquembouche, I've got a combination of both. So I'm sticking the nozzle right in and keep piping and then pick a few up until they feel like they're quite weighty and full. There's nothing worse than biting into a profiterole and it's not filled completely. All the profiteroles are filled, ready to go. You need to work straight away on assembling the croquembouche so that you have minimal downtime where the toffee is starting to dissolve. I have reheated some toffee which I use to dip the profiteroles in, and I always have 1 pot of sugar going while I've got 1 pot to dip in so that I have no downtime. I'm going to use a total of 4 pots of sugar for the croquembouche, so it will take quite a bit of sugar, possibly 5 when I do the spun sugar as well. When you reheat the toffee, it does go darker, so you have to be very, very careful that it's not too dark but it's obvious where the joins are. Now what I have here is the base for the croquembouche. I start with a circular board. You can just cut out a disc to use as a guide. If the base isn't straight and circular, the whole croquembouche will be off and crooked and can easily collapse. So by using this board, I'm going to go around the outside of it and then I remove the board. All right, so I'm going to start by picking up the profiterole, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip it from this side right through to this side before placing it down. The first layer will stick to the plate, so make sure you've got something that isn't affected by heat, otherwise it can crack. So we're dipping that in, that looks so good. Once again, make sure it's not too cold because it'll be too thick to bite into. Now the beauty of having that straight base means that when we put this on, I'll put it on so you can see what I'm doing. Ensure that it doesn't touch the board. Hold it for a minute till it stays. Now the beauty of having that flat base is we're going to align them all and ensure that that flat base is straight up and down. So alternate coffee with chocolate. Then we stick the next one on to the first one. So you must have toffee on the side so they adhere together. Now I'm taking the board out before I completely hem it in. I can see the line I need to follow to finish the circle. Now I've got the first layer done, we're going to go with the second layer and we're going to continue up. So depending on how big you want the croquembouche, the second layer we're going to bring in just slightly. So we bring it in a couple of millimeters. Try to go in between each profiterole now and pick different profiteroles, they aren't all exactly the same size, so that they slot into each individual space. My toffee now is too cold, so I'm going to start a new batch, which will take about 20 minutes, and then I'm going to continue with the assembly. I've made a fresh pot of toffee. Although it's tempting to continue to go on with the pot that you have, it will make the toffee very, very thick and a darker color. So it's important that you do refresh it when needed. Even start cooking the next pot before you'll finish with this one, so there's no downtime or waiting. So I'm up to the third layer, so I'm gradually moving in with each layer, but you must keep it consistent. Always make sure the flat side of the profiterole is straight up and down, not angled in or out. Now for the spun sugar. Now I have a drop sheet. I have done this before, so I'm very well prepared because it does go everywhere. If you can do it outside, but you will have sticky pavers. The toffee has cooled down. I've got a bunch of forks. You can also, if you can bear to do it, cut the end of a whisk off. Whisk works the best. Otherwise, a bunch of forks works great. I have some wooden spoons here. I'm just going to oil the surface and keep oiling them as needed to ensure that the toffee doesn't stick. Now I'm going to jump around the other side and start flicking some toffee around. Now I'm going to dip the forks in. That's the beauty of having slightly cold toffee. And then once you've let the major drips come off, flick it between the spoons. And you've got these beautiful angel threads. And keep building that up. So get the major drips off the fork. Once you've got enough of the sugar, take it off the spoons. It goes for a long way. Bunch it up, so don't crush it, but just sort of loosely bunch it up. And we can fold that up. And you can add it on in parts, so you don't have to add it on all together. Start at the bottom and just gently press it in, and we wrap it around like a ribbon. I love this part. And we're going to create more and add it on to what we've done and continue to wind that all the way around to the top. A little bit messy, but oh so worth it. I absolutely love making croquembouche. Keep in mind things like you can freeze the profiteroles. You can make the crème pâtissière up to 24 hours in advance. Weigh all your sugar, have it already, so that the process doesn't take as long. I really do hope you make the croquembouche. Let me know. You can flavour the crème pâtissière with any flavour, but truly my favourite is the coffee crème pâtissière made with the Jura coffee machine.